There's a brutal truth no one dares to tell you. Women change when they pass 40. Not just in appearance, but in psychology. Not just in their bodies, but in their attitude toward men, marriage, and life itself. If you ignore this shift, you'll pay for it. Not only with your peace, but with your family, your finances, and your future. Otto Weininger, the controversial philosopher who dissected the psychology of sex and character, wrote that women live almost entirely in the present moment. They have little regard for permanence, continuity, or legacy. A young woman's beauty and fertility tie her naturally to men and to family. But once those traits begin to fade, she begins to feel the ground shifting under her feet. At 40, she can sense it. The power she once held without effort, her ability to captivate, to charm, to inspire desire, begins to weaken. And with its decline comes contempt. Contempt for the man she married. Contempt for the children who no longer need her. Contempt for herself. This contempt rarely shows itself directly. Instead, it hides in sarcasm, in sharp little comments, in quiet withdrawals of affection. It emerges in the constant comparison of what she gave up for family, in accusations that her husband has failed to make her happy, in the restless desire to reclaim the youth slipping through her hands. And here is where men go wrong. They try to fix it. They beg. They chase. They pour out apologies for problems that were never theirs. They think they can argue against biology, reason against insecurity, logic against resentment. But the contempt only grows. Because what she is really fighting isn't you, it's time. And time always wins. This is why the danger after 40 is so sharp. A woman who feels her power fading often lashes out at the very people closest to her. The husband who gave her stability becomes the target of her rage. The children she once protected become reminders that her youth is gone. She becomes restless, searching for excitement, convinced she has missed out. And if you as a man don't understand what's happening, you'll mistake this for love lost. You'll think you failed her. You'll think you need to bend further, to sacrifice more, to carry her moods until she recovers. But she won't recover, not from time, not from mortality, not from the deep biological panic that comes with fading beauty. The only question is, will you stand firm or will you collapse under her storm? Weininger believed that men, unlike women, have the capacity for permanence, for principle, for standing above the chaos of shifting moods. But to do so requires clarity. You must see the contempt for what it is. Projection. She is not angry at you, she is angry at herself. She is not contemptuous of you, she is contemptuous of her own decline. And if you can hold that truth without folding, you will survive what many men do not. Because the statistics don't lie. Divorce rates skyrocket in middle age, and women initiate the majority of them. Families collapse, children suffer, and men are left shattered, not because they were weak husbands, but because they never saw the shift coming. The man who refuses to face this reality will be blindsided. The man who sees it clearly, who names it for what it is, can prepare. And preparation begins with one truth. When she crosses 40, you are no longer dealing with the woman you married. You are dealing with a new force, one born of resentment, fear, and fading power. You can't reason it away. You can only decide how you will respond. By the time a woman enters her 40s, she begins to feel something most men can barely comprehend: the raw panic of fading power. For decades, she has been rewarded. Open doors, admiring glances, easy validation. The world bent toward her because of beauty, youth, and fertility. But now, the reflection in the mirror grows harsher. Compliments fade. Younger women begin to eclipse her. Men look past her, toward the very girl she once was. This isn't a slow, graceful shift. It's an earthquake, and beneath her smile, resentment grows. Otto Weininger argued that women live in the immediacy of their appearance, their sensuality, their physical presence. When that begins to wither, it feels like death, not just of beauty, but of identity itself. A woman who once felt infinite now feels invisible. That invisibility terrifies her, so she fights back. Some attempt to cover it with cosmetics, surgeries, or desperate attempts to dress and act like women half their age. Others chase excitement, affairs, nightlife, reckless spending, as if chaos itself could drown out the sound of time ticking. But no matter what disguise she wears, the inner panic doesn't fade. It only grows, and the target of her rage becomes obvious: her husband, her family, her life choices. Suddenly, every sacrifice she made, raising children, supporting a household, committing to one man, feels like a betrayal. She starts to rewrite history, to tell herself she gave too much, that she wasted her youth, that she could have done better. This is the dangerous illusion that ruins families. And the man beside her, if he is blind, will walk straight into the trap. He will try to soothe her panic with affection, attention, reassurance. He will pour more of himself into her bottomless void, not realizing that no amount of comfort can compete with biology. Because here's the truth: you cannot fight time on her behalf. You cannot give her back her youth. You cannot protect her from the fear of being replaced by younger women. The panic she feels is not something you can carry. It is hers alone. This is why marriages collapse so violently after 40. The woman, desperate to reclaim what she feels she lost, often lashes out at the very man who stayed loyal. She accuses him of dullness, of failing to inspire her, of making her life small. In reality, it's not him she resents, it's time itself. And here's the brutal irony: the harder he tries to prove his worth, the more she despises him. Weakness in the face of her panic only fuels contempt. She doesn't need another servant. She doesn't need another apology. She needs a man strong enough to stand firm, unshaken by her storm. Weininger saw it with clarity. Only the man rooted in principle, not swayed by moods, can withstand this shift. The man who panics alongside her is doomed. This is where so many men fail. They confuse compassion with surrender. They believe love means carrying her fear for her. But in reality, the more they bend, the less respect they command. And once respect dies, love soon follows. To handle a woman past 40, you must stop trying to be her comforter and start being her anchor. Let her rage against time. Let her project her fears, but never let her shake your foundation. Because if you lose your ground, she will not feel saved. She will feel disgusted. The panic of aging is not yours to fix. It is hers to face. Your role is not to dissolve into her fear, but to remain whole in yourself. Because the man who survives this storm is not the man who runs from truth, but the one who looks it directly in the eye and refuses to flinch. Here's the mistake almost every man makes when faced with a woman unraveling in her 40s. He tries to win her back. He sees her pulling away, growing bitter, restless, resentful, and instead of standing firm, he panics. He thinks, maybe I haven't done enough. Maybe I need to love her harder, explain myself better, give her more. And so he begins the slow suicide of masculine weakness, apologizing for things he didn't do, bending to moods he can't control, begging for affection that will never return. This is the trap, because the more he chases, the more she despises him. Otto Weininger was merciless about this dynamic. He argued that women crave strength, permanence, individuality in a man, precisely because they lack it themselves. But when a man collapses into servitude, he ceases to be a man in her eyes. He becomes another child to scold, another pet to control, another servant to command. And no woman, especially not one raging against her own decline, can respect a man she dominates. This is why marriages implode after 40. Not because the man wasn't loyal, not because he wasn't generous, but because he was weak. Because when her storm arrived, he surrendered. You must understand this. Contempt is the death of love. Once she despises you, nothing you give will resurrect her respect. Flowers won't save you. Dinners won't save you. Endless explanations won't save you. Every act of pleading digs the grave deeper. The more you try to make her happy, the more she feels the opposite, disgust. Because deep down, she doesn't want another man to dissolve into her pain. She wants a man who refuses to. This is where most men cannot endure. They confuse love with weakness, empathy with self-erasure. They believe that by carrying her panic, they are saving her. But what they are actually doing is confirming her worst fear, that time has killed her power, and the man beside her is too small to withstand it. Weakness fuels contempt. Contempt fuels destruction. And soon, the marriage collapses under the weight of his own surrender. Look at the divorce courts. Look at the statistics. Women initiate the majority of divorces after 40. And how many men walk away shattered, broke, stripped of family, stripped of purpose, still clinging to the illusion that if only they had given more, she would have stayed. No, she would not have stayed, because giving more wasn't the cure. Standing firm was. Weininger warned that individuality is the only thing that commands respect. A man must remain unshaken in his identity, unmoved by moods, unbroken by projections. If he loses himself trying to keep her, he has already lost her. So learn this now. Never beg, never plead, never dissolve. Because the moment you do, you're not her man, you're her servant. And servants are disposable. The trap of weak men is believing that love means surrender. In reality, love without respect is slavery. And slavery is exactly what breeds contempt. So if you want to survive a woman over 40, never fall into this trap. Don't hand her your dignity in exchange for scraps of affection. Because once you do, you're not saving your family. You're wrecking it with your own weakness. Hold your ground. Stand in principle. Because the man who can endure her storm without bending is the only man she can still respect. And respect, more than love, is the foundation of survival. If weakness destroys respect, then strength is the only path left. But here's the paradox. Strength doesn't mean aggression, domination, or screaming to assert authority. True strength is quieter, sharper, harder to imitate. It is the refusal to be moved by moods. It is individuality that does not dissolve under pressure. Otto Weininger understood this clearly. He wrote that women test men constantly, not always consciously, but instinctively. And after 40, when her panic over fading youth intensifies, the tests become harsher. Every jab, every sarcastic remark, every attempt to bait you into defensiveness is a test. If you flinch, if you react, if you collapse into explanation, you fail. The narrow path is this: remain unshaken. Not cold, not cruel, but immovable. You acknowledge her storm without entering it. You don't fight the chaos, but you don't let it drag you under either. This is why humor, strangely enough, is one of the most powerful weapons a man has. Not nervous laughter, not self-deprecating weakness, but genuine, masculine humor. The ability to see through her attacks, her moods, her bitterness, and respond with lightness. To smile where another man would grovel. To turn her sting into smoke with a calm remark. Because humor signals what weakness never can, that you are not afraid. And fear is what fuels her contempt most of all. But humor alone isn't enough. It must be anchored in principle. If you have no core, no mission, no standards, then your humor's just a mask. She will see through it. The narrow path demands a man rooted in something greater than her approval. And this is where most men fail. Not because they don't love, but because they have nothing beyond her. Their mission ended with marriage. Their individuality dissolved into family life. They became satellites orbiting her moods, instead of suns with their own gravity. A woman over 40 cannot respect a man who has no orbit of his own. She will devour him, consciously or not. She will test him until he collapses. And when he collapses, she will leave. The narrow path, then, is a balancing act. You don't fight her panic with panic. You don't surrender to her moods. You don't drown in explanations. You hold your ground with calmness, clarity, and yes, even humor. You remain yourself. This doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean apathy. It means strength without begging, care without collapsing, presence without slavery. Because here's the truth. She doesn't want you to carry her fear. She wants to know if you can withstand it. She wants to know if your identity can survive her storm. Most men cannot. They fold. They apologize endlessly. They try to make it right. But the man who survives is the one who can stand tall, smile calmly, and refuse to be destroyed by her panic. This is the narrow path. Hard, demanding, often lonely. But it is the only path that preserves respect. Weininger believed that men are defined by their ability to rise above immediacy, above moods, above passions, above the chaos of the moment, to live not as a slave of the present, but as a bearer of principle. That is what sets a man apart. That is what commands respect when everything else fades. And if you can walk this narrow path, you not only protect yourself, you protect your family. Because only a man who refuses to collapse can hold the center when everything around him begins to break. But the final test remains, because no matter how strong you are, there are moments when collapse may come, not from your weakness, but from hers. And that's where the final part begins. What to do when the storm destroys everything, and how to survive with dignity intact. Even if you walk the narrow path, calm, strong, rooted, sometimes the storm still tears everything down. Because when a woman over 40 decides she has missed out, when she convinces herself that her youth was wasted, when contempt hardens into resolve, she often chooses destruction over endurance. This is the final test. Statistics don't lie. Women initiate the majority of divorces, especially after midlife. The excuses vary. I need to find myself. I deserve happiness. We've grown apart. But beneath them all is the same pattern, an attempt to escape time, to rewrite the story, to chase youth in the last chapter. And when this happens, the man who panics loses everything. He grovels in court, begs for another chance, sacrifices dignity to salvage what cannot be salvaged. And in the process, he destroys himself. But the man who understands the psychology, who has already prepared for the possibility, walks away differently. He doesn't collapse into self-pity. He doesn't drown in bitterness. He accepts reality as it is, not as he wishes it to be. Otto Weininger argued that true masculinity lies in principle, not circumstance. When everything falls apart, the only thing left is the integrity of the man himself. And that integrity can survive any storm. Here's the brutal truth. Sometimes the family breaks. Sometimes the marriage ends. Sometimes the woman you built a life with decides to burn it down, and you cannot stop her. You cannot argue her out of it. You cannot love her panic into silence. The only thing you can control is how you stand when the dust settles. Do you stand broken, humiliated, emptied of dignity? Or do you stand tall, unshaken, carrying your mission forward? Because in the end, that is what determines whether the storm wrecks only your marriage or wrecks your soul. This is why men must be anchored in more than their relationships. A man without mission, without principle, without strength beyond her approval, will not survive. But the man who has built himself, body, mind, spirit, will endure even when she leaves. And here's the final paradox. Sometimes the very collapse you feared becomes the doorway to freedom. The contempt, the chaos, the destruction, it burns away illusion. It forces you to face the truth. You were never meant to find your entire identity in her. You were meant to stand alone. If you survive this test, you emerge not as the broken husband, but as the man who knows his worth cannot be destroyed by time, by moods, or even by betrayal. This is the lesson Weininger leaves us with. Women over 40 may bring storms, but the man who understands their psychology, who refuses weakness, who stands rooted in himself, cannot be wrecked. His family may collapse, his marriage may end, but his soul remains intact. And from that strength he rebuilds, not as a servant, not as a victim, but as a man. So I'll leave you with this. If you've lived through this storm, or if you see it coming, write in the comments, "I stand unshaken." Because dignity is the one thing no court, no betrayal, no collapse can take from you. Share this with a brother who needs the warning. And subscribe, because here, we don't soothe men with illusions. We arm them with the truth. The journey doesn't end here. In our next video, we'll dive deeper into the psychology of aging, power, and how men can reclaim control even when the world is against them. Stay strong, stay awake, and remember, storms will come, but the man who refuses to bend will never be destroyed.